The first December snowfall fell over Snowberry Hollow as if someone, somewhere, had shaken a giant snow globe a little too hard. The lights along Main Street reflected on the wet asphalt, and every shop was competing for the unofficial prize of most excessive Christmas decorations of the year. On the corner of Maple Street, the little bakery La Estrella Azucarada, the sugared star, shone with its own kind of charm. A fogged-up front window from the heat, simple wreaths of pine branches, a slightly crooked red bow, and in golden letters, the name that meant everything to its owner. Inside, it smelled of vanilla, toasted butter, and freshly ground coffee. The perfect combination to destroy any intention of dieting in under 4 seconds. Lucía Morales, freshly 40, curvy, dark-haired, with curls piled up in a bun that had been awake longer than half the town, was at war with a whisk. "If you get stuck again, I'm turning you into a Christmas ornament," she muttered, glaring at the batter as if she could intimidate it into cooperating. At her feet, Churro, a corgi with a round butt and questionable dignity, let out a short bark, the kind of sound you make when you're giving your opinion without anyone having asked for it. "Relax, Inspector. It's not domestic violence if it's against a whisk." The oven pinged with unnecessary drama. Lucía turned, opened the door, and a cloud of sweet steam flooded the kitchen. Carefully, she pulled out a tray of star rolls, little swirls of cinnamon and orange, with pearl sugar on top sparkling as if they had their own frost, her grandmother's recipe, the one that had rescued more sad Mondays than any therapist. She set the tray down on the work table, blew on one of the rolls, and allowed herself a second of silent pride. "That's it, Lucía. Maybe you don't have your life figured out, but your carbs are absolutely thriving." The bell over the door jingled, announcing the arrival of the first official customer of the day. Although she was more like part of the furniture. "Tell me you made star bread, or I'll faint right here," declared Martha, well into her 70s, red coat, even redder lipstick, and the energy of, "I've survived everything already, darling." "Good morning to you too, Martha," Lucía smiled. "Yes, there's star bread. I'm not carrying you if you faint. You're very femme fatale, but you weigh a ton." Martha sniffed the air with narrowed eyes, as if she were at some sort of sacred ceremony. "La Estrella Azucarada," she proclaimed, "the only place in the county where Christmas smells the way it's supposed to smell." "I'm going to embroider that on my apron," Lucía said, pouring her some coffee. Churro trotted over to Martha's feet, where she of course had a piece of cookie, for later, in her pocket. The dog located it like a heat-seeking missile. "Don't look at me like that, Shorty," she scolded him while giving him half the cookie. "It's Christmas. Calories are an urban legend." Lucía rolled her eyes. "Of course, the official sugar promotion department. My kind of people." But as soon as Martha tried the roll, her expression shifted into a mix of emotion and something more calculated. "The voting started, you know that, right?" she asked, all casual. "For the window display contest?" Lucía slid another tray onto the counter. "I know I'm not going to win. The home decor shop looks like the entire Christmas catalog exploded inside it." "No, girl. For the county Christmas bakery tour," Martha said, leaning in. "The winner gets free advertising and a sweet contract with the lakeside hotels. New customers for the whole year." Lucía felt a small knot in her stomach. "Great. More pressure. Exactly what my anxiety needed to complete the set. That's for big bakeries, Martha. You know, perfect displays, colorful macarons," she shrugged. "I've got a dog-shaped churro and star bread." "And that, Lucía, is exactly what people want," Martha grumbled. "You put a perfect display in front of me and I get suspicious. No one wants to eat in a place where it looks like they're going to scold you for taking a bite." The bell jingled again. A gust of cold air came in, along with a few cheeky snowflakes sneaking in behind it. The figure that crossed the threshold wasn't from town. Lucía knew it instantly. He was too new, too freshly arrived, to fit anywhere on her mental map of Snowberry Hollow neighbors. He wore a navy jacket, a gray scarf half unraveled around his neck, dark jeans and boots stained with dried mud, as if construction sites were a regular part of his life. His brown hair was tousled by the wind, with melting snow caught between the strands. A 1 or 2 day beard framed his face, giving him that air of, "I'm responsible, but I also know how to laugh." He took off his gloves, revealing big hands with dark smudges across his knuckles, Ink? Paint? Grease from some technical contraption? Churro, who had been busy with Martha's crumbs, trotted over to sniff him. 2 seconds of inspect ion and then a lick to his shoe. Well, canine approval achieved, said the stranger, with a slow smile that warmed more than the coffee. Lucía, spatula in hand and flour on her cheek, realized she had been staring at him a couple of seconds too long. Perfect. Monday, 6:30 in the morning, dark circles, killer bun. And today of all days a guy walks in looking like a winter clothing ad. Very nice, universe. Impeccable timing. Welcome to La Estrella Azucarada, she said, finding her voice again. If you're looking for salad, you've got the wrong address. The greenest thing here is the Christmas tree. He laughed. His eyes were a very light, attentive green, like he actually saw everything. Perfect, he replied. I hate salad in December. He stepped up to the counter. Are you Lucía? She blinked. Depends. She raised an eyebrow. Are you here to ask for more hours, to sell me something, or to claim copyright over the smell of cinnamon? I'm here with a proposal, he said, resting his forearms on the counter. I'm Elliot Blake. I work with the town council organizing the Christmas market in the square. He paused for a beat. And I also collaborate with Frost and Bloom. That last word dropped into the air like an ice cube into hot coffee. Frost and Bloom, the chain of cafes and bakeries that had been the focus of every conversation, rumor, and resigned sigh in Snowberry Hollow for weeks. The ones who were opening a gorgeous place with modern stuff, 2 streets away. The ones who, according to people, were interested in buying up buildings in the area. Lucía set the spatula down on the table with exaggerated care. There it is, the special envoy from the franchise. Of course he was going to be handsome. Capitalism always dresses well. What an interesting mix, she commented. Town council and big chain. Isn't that like being both the referee and a player on the opposing team? Elliot lifted his hands in a, I know, gesture. Let's just say I've been wearing too many hats for too long, he replied. But right now I'm here, officially, as the Christmas market guy. From her table, Martha was watching them shamelessly. And unofficially as the handsome guy of the day, she added without the slightest shame. Delighted, I'm Martha, the voice of local wisdom. Pleasure to meet you, Martha. He smiled. Lucía crossed her arms, curious despite herself. All right, then, Elliot Blake, Mr. Market, she said. What exactly does the town council want from my bakery? Because I already know what the chain wants. My address on a list of possible acquisitions. He shook his head. That's exactly why I'm here, he answered. I want to propose that La Estrella Azucarada be the heart of the county Christmas bakery tour, starting and ending point. Main tasting right here. Every route would pass by your door. Martha let out a triumphant, Ha! It took Lucía a second to process it. The hub? She repeated, of all of them? Of all of them, Elliot confirmed, serious but with that mischievous glint still in his eyes. I've been visiting the bakeries around the county, but this one... He looked around, letting his gaze rest for a moment on the garlands, the trays, the way Churro was half snoring under a table. This one has something. And according to 90% of the people I've interviewed, you make the best star bread in the county. 100%, Martha corrected, raising a finger. We don't do weak surveys here. And Frost and Bloom is okay with a small bakery being the center of attention. Lucía asked, not losing focus. Frost and Bloom wanted to be the center, Elliot admitted. But the council. And the town, he shrugged, they've been pretty clear. If it doesn't go through La Estrella Azucarada, it's not a tour and it's nothing. Lucía felt something strange. As if someone had opened a window in her chest to let in fresh air. Wait, the town said that, about my bakery. And the chain's golden boy is here to boost it instead of erase it? Suspicious. Very suspicious. And annoyingly sweet. We need your yes to finalize the route, Elliot went on. You bring the soul, he pointed at the oven, the trays, the dog. I'll take care of logistics, posters, social media, all the rest. Lucía looked around. The walls with old photos, the chalkboard menu, the slightly crooked tree with handmade ornaments, Martha's usual chair. She looked at Churro, who, as always, seemed only concerned about potential food. She looked at Elliot. All right, she said at last. I'm in? But if this turns out to be a trap to turn me into one of those before and after photos for a giant franchise, I'm sending you to explain to the town why there's no more star bread. Elliot smiled slowly, as if something inside him unclenched. Deal, he replied. And you can have that threat in writing if you want. Right then, the ceiling decided to join the conversation. A drop of water fell right on the Merry Christmas doormat, practically erasing the Merry. Fantastic, Lucia muttered. Just what we needed. A leak to give the whole thing extra drama. Elliot looked up. How long has it been leaking? Since the roof decided that living in a snowy town was too much responsibility, she answered. I've got a ladder, but last time I nearly ended up hanging from the lights. I'd rather not give the neighborhood that show, to be honest. I can take a look, he offered, without hesitation. At the leak, I mean. Not at you hanging from the lights. Martha cleared her throat, amused. Lucia watched him for a second too long. The chain guy, the council guy, the green-eyed guy, offering to fix her leak. Of course. The full package, handsome, kind, and good with his hands. I don't trust it. But I could definitely use it, she sighed. Fine, Elliot Blake, she said. If you know how to handle a ladder without dying in the process, go ahead. But if you fall, I don't have insurance that covers meddling architects. I accept the terms, he replied. She had no idea if it was going to be a disaster, a beautiful story, or both mixed together. But for the first time in a long while, Christmas didn't feel like just a season to survive. Felt like the beginning of something. The aluminium ladder had been leaning against the storage room wall for years, staring at her with a kind of passive-aggressive superiority. Lucia had hated it ever since she'd almost died hanging a giant snowflake that first year of the bakery. Elliot picked it up as if it were made of cardboard. Where's the battlefield? He asked, half smiling. Right there, Lucia pointed, folding her arms. The dramatic leak. It loves to show up when there is an audience. A fat drop chose that exact moment to fall on the Mary of the doormat, almost wiping the word out. See? It even has a sense of timing, she added. Keep this up and by next Christmas it'll just say, hang in there. Churro sat down beside the ladder, as if he were site supervisor. Martha, of course, didn't move from her table, but she did shift in her chair to get a better panoramic view. I'm just going to stay over here, just in case, she announced. In case someone needs to call an ambulance or the press, Lucia rolled her eyes. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Martha. Elliot opened the ladder with a metallic click. Before climbing, he looked at Lucia. Will you hold it for me? The question was innocent, but her brain heard it as something with a lot more subtext. Relax, woman. It's just a ladder, not a blood pact. Sure, she said, stepping behind it and gripping the sides firmly. If you fall, at least you'll land on something soft. Perks of having a curvy body. Elliot laughed and glanced back over his shoulder. One of those looks that checks your soul, not your body. Perks for me, definitely, he said, without a hint of mockery. Heat crept unexpectedly up Lucia's neck. As he climbed, the fabric of his jacket stretched over his shoulders and back. There was something in the way he moved confident, but not show-offy, that she liked more than she was ready to admit out loud.
Focus, leak, water, ceiling, not back, not shoulders.
Not forearms, ceiling. Elliot examined the area with a professional frown. Okay, he murmured. This isn't serious, but if it isn't fixed properly, every snowfall is going to want to come and say hi in here. It already does, Lucia replied. Snow and bills, hand in hand. He worked for a few minutes, adjusting some tape, checking the frame, setting a temporary tray up in the loft space to divert the water. I know a roofer who can come take a proper look, he said as he climbed down. I owe him a favor. Or actually, he owes me one endless moving day. Lucia studied him carefully. Sounds expensive. Sounds like he'll give you a small-town discount. If I tell him it's for the bakery that makes star bread, he replied. I can give him your number if you want. She hesitated for a second. Trust. That word still poked at her a bit. Trusting men who promised to fix things and then ran as soon as they saw the emotional bill. Trusting people who said, I want to help, but really meant, I want to control you. But Elliot wasn't rushing.
He wasn't pushing, He wasn't telling her what she had to do.
He was offering an option and waiting. "All right," she said at last. "Give him my number. If the estimate doesn't force me to sell a kidney, we'll talk." "Perfect." He folded up the ladder. "One leak less on your apocalypse list. You'd be surprised how long that list is." She shot back. "Your early mornings scare me more than your list," he countered. "At 5 in the morning, I'm basically a vegetable." Lucía smiled, half proud, half tired. "You get used to it." She paused for a second. "And you, what exactly are you?" "An architect." "Official Christmas organizer? Undercover sugar agent?" Elliot leaned on the counter. "Architect by training, yeah," he confirmed. "Right now, I'm the town's guy for everything. I coordinate the market, the bakery tour, make sure the stalls in the square don't blow over in the wind. And on the side, I try to convince Frost and Bloom not to roll in here like a bulldozer with fairy lights."
He said it with a calm sincerity that threw Lucia a little.
"You're not the typical corporate envoy," she commented, narrowing her eyes. "You were expecting something more."
He made a vague gesture.
"More suit, less mud on the boots. I had a few suits in my previous life," he said with a crooked smile. "I prefer this now." "Previous life?" she asked, curious. Elliot shrugged. "Big city office, giant projects where nobody knew anyone. Bosses who loved to talk about revitalizing neighborhoods, while they pushed out the people who'd lived there all their lives." He ran a hand over the back of his neck, uncomfortable. "I realized I was drawing plans to turn homes into products." The sentence stuck with Lucía more than she expected. "And you decided to move to Snowberry Hollow to organize Christmas markets," she concluded. "And to try to do better," he added. "At least try." Martha cleared her throat, theatrically. "Great story, kid," she said. "You're going to make half the town fall in love with you with that speech." Then she looked at Lucía. The other half already fell for this one's star. "Bread." Lucía threw a napkin at her, hiding her blush. "Stop bothering the customers, Martha." "I'm just telling the truth," Martha replied, handing Churro another piece of cookie. Elliot checked his watch. "I've got to get to the council offices," he sighed. "Meeting about plugs, cables, and how to keep the Christmas tree from setting the square on fire." "Riveting stuff. Sounds glamorous," Lucía said dryly. "Oh, it is," he confirmed. "But I can swing by this afternoon, if you like, after 5. We can go over the parts of the tour that affect you timing, quantities of bread, outside decor. And I'll bring the posters so you can take a look." "Do you also know about decoration, or just leeks and flammable trees?" she asked. "I make decent sketches," he said. "But I'm happy for you to be the aesthetics boss. I just hang lights where you tell me to." Tagging, "Guy who doesn't argue with female leadership." Approved. "Fine," Lucía conceded. "I close at 5. If you show up with posters and hands willing to wrestle with garlands, I'll let you in. Deal." He pulled his gloves back on, wrapped his scarf around his neck again, and walked towards the door. Before stepping out, he turned back for a second. "By the way," he added, "if you need to change anything about the arrangement times, number of people, whatever, just tell me. I'm here to make the tour work, not steamroll you." Lucía held his gaze for a moment. "I'll keep that in mind," she said. She watched him step out into the snowy street, blurred a little by the lightly fogged glass. The bell jingled, and for a second, silence filled the bakery. Martha was the first to break it. "Well," she said, standing up with effort but plenty of dignity. "That boy looks at this bakery like he's seeing a church and a French patisserie at the same time." "He's looking at the bakery, Martha," Lucía protested. "And at the dog." "Everybody looks at the dog." Churro, who at that exact moment was chasing his own tail, didn't do much to support her argument. Martha walked up to the counter with her empty mug. "Sweetheart," she said, dropping her voice a little. "You've been on your own for a long time. And very well on your own, sure. But it's okay if a man comes into your life and doesn't show up to complicate it, but to go along with it." Lucía puffed out her cheeks and let the air go slowly. "Breathe. This is not a Sunday afternoon rom-com. This is your bakery, with bills, leaks, and a Christmas market about to chew you up." "Martha, he just came to pitch a bakery tour and fix a leak," she replied. "I'm not buying rings." "You do what you want," the other woman said, grabbing another roll. "But put on that green sweater that shows off your waist for when he comes back this afternoon." "That's real marketing," Lucía laughed, shaking her head. But when, hours later, the clock crept dangerously close to 5, she found herself in front of the tiny bathroom mirror, redoing her bun, wiping a flour smudge off her cheek, and hesitating between her usual sweater and, yes, the green one. She ended up choosing the green. Pure professional respect, nothing else. If I'm going to talk business, the least I can do is look fabulous. At 5:04, the bell rang again. Elliot came in with snow in his hair, a folder in one hand and a cardboard box under the other arm. "I brought what I promised," he announced. "Posters." "And reinforcements," Churro greeted him, but wiggling like he'd just found his favorite person of the day. Lucia felt something similar click into place deep inside, as if a small, sleepy part of her heart had just raised its hand. The afternoon was only just beginning. And so was the chemistry. Before we go on with the flower, the fairy lights, and this dangerously charming architect, hit pause for a second and subscribe to the channel. Seriously, it's free. And that way YouTube keeps showing you cozy romance stories instead of random videos you never asked for. If you're already subscribed, thank you for being here. If not, this is your official sign from the universe. Subscribe now and let's continue the story. Lucia flipped the sign on the door to "closed" with a sigh that was half relief, half exhaustion. Outside, afternoon was falling fast, that winter blue light that looked like a permanent melancholic filter. Inside, the bakery was in that strange in-between state, no customers anymore, but still smelling of coffee and freshly baked star bread. Elliot set the box down on a nearby table and rubbed his hands together, numb from the cold. "Right," he said. "Clearfield. Ready to turn this place into the most spectacular starting point of the County Christmas Bakery Tour." Churro trotted over and put his paws on Elliot's leg, clearly voting in favor of the plan. "We've got approval from the Canine Committee," Elliot added. "Strong start," Lucia smiled, still holding on to the edge of the counter as if she needed the reminder that she was on solid ground. "Breathe. It's just work. A guy, some lights, some posters. This is not an audition for the lead in a rom-com, even if the casting is going pretty well. Let's see those reinforcements," she said, stepping up to the box. Elliot opened it with theatrical flourish. Inside there were 2 long strings of warm lights, the kind that looked like tiny fireflies. A handful of light metal stars to hang from the ceiling. A roll of thick red ribbon. A bunch of small laminated posters with the tour logo. A steaming mug of hot chocolate and a star-shaped bun. "The stars are because I'm very literal," he explained. "The sugared stars, works for me," Lucia said, picking one up. "As long as you didn't bring a life-size talking Santa, we're fine. I had one in the car, but if you insist," he joked. She burst out laughing. Mental note: the guy knows how to crack jokes. Dangerous, bread is vice enough. I don't need another. "Okay," she decided. Division of labor. I decide where everything goes. You climb the death-defying heights. Churro supervises and eats anything that falls on the floor. Sound good? Sounds way better organized than most town hall meetings, Elliot admitted. "At your command, boss." The word boss sent a tiny pleasant tickle through her stomach that she tried to ignore. They started with the window lights. Lucia pointed at the top frame of the glass. "I want it to look warm, not like a nightclub," she explained. "No aggressive flashing. My customers come here for bread, not epileptic fits. Warm Christmas lighting, visual hug mode," he summarized. "Got it." While Elliot climbed the ladder and started putting up the strands, Lucia plugged in an extension cord, wrestling with the sockets like always. "I see you and electricity don't get along," he commented from above. "Electricity hates me," she shot back. "And the feeling is mutual. I can check the sockets later too," he offered. "Same fee, 1-star bun and a smile." Lucia looked up at him. "Listen, the bun is fine," she said, "but the smile's not free, okay? That one comes with tax included." Elliot laughed, and the sound rolled over her like a small, gentle waterfall. A couple of minutes later, the first lights were in place. Lucia flipped the switch. The window lit up with a warm line that framed the glass. From inside, it looked like a slice of golden afternoon trapped in the cold blue of the evening outside. "Wow," she murmured, downplaying it. "Not bad. Translation, we nailed it," Elliot interpreted. She turned towards him, ready with a sarcastic comment. and found him stepping down the last rung of the ladder, much closer than she'd expected. Her green sweater, his plaid shirt, the lights reflecting in both their eyes. For a second, neither of them moved. Churro, expert scene breaker, chose that moment to scratch his ear noisily. "What?" Elliot asked when he noticed her looking. "Nothing," she lied. "Just—" "The lights work. Miracle. What's also working are your hormones, Morales. Don't forget it." They've woken up from hibernation. Closing parenthesis to break the moment. Lucía grabbed one of the tour posters. "Okay," she said. "Show me exactly what brand of organized chaos we're selling." The design was simple but cute. A little map of the county with a tiny drawing for each bakery, the tour logo, dates and times. And, in a highlighted corner, a photo of the sugared star with a banner. "Start and end point special star bread." Lucía swallowed. "You put a photo of my bakery on the cover?" she asked.
Technically, it's a shared cover, he replied, dragging a chair over to sit on.
"But yeah, this is home base. Everything else is a stop." The word home did something strange in her chest. "Don't say home too loud or the wall will get emotional and collapse," she joked automatically. But Elliot didn't let himself get sidetracked. "You know this means you're going to have half the county walking through that door in 3 days, right?"
He said, "A lot of people are going to see you."
"I know," she nodded. "I'm trying not to think about it. My strategy is, bake like there's no tomorrow and let the cinnamon do the work." They sat at the tall table where customers usually had coffee. Now it was covered in papers, colored pens and an old notebook with Lucia's grandmother's cramped handwriting on the first pages. "Is that yours?" he asked, nodding at the notebook. Lucía lowered her gaze. A different kind of smile slipped out, softer. "It was my grandmother's," she said. "She started selling bread and sweets out of her kitchen years ago. I grew up getting under her feet, stealing bits of raw dough when she wasn't looking." She ran a fingertip down one of the pages. "When I got divorced, I came to Snowberry Hollow with this, a bit of savings and a whole lot of anxiety," she went on. "The Sugared Star was a bakery that was up for transfer. A disaster, everything old, half abandoned. I fell in love with it anyway. As an architect, I should be horrified," Elliot joked. "As a person, I get it." Lucía let out a brief little laugh. "My ex said it was insane," she continued, her voice a bit slower. "That a woman like me had no business starting a shop. That with this age and this body, there was no way I'd be hauling flour sacks every morning. And that nobody wanted to see a baker's sweating. That's what pretty city shop windows are for." She paused. "Breathe. You've told this before. It doesn't hurt the same now. It just pokes a little. I guess I got tired of someone looking at me like I was a project that needed adjusting," she added with a shrug. "So I decided to look at myself for what I am, a woman who knows how to bake bread, who has big hips and who is not going to apologize for either." Elliot listened without interrupting, elbows on the table, fingers intertwined. There was no pity in his expression, just a clean, focused attention. "Do you regret it?" he asked calmly. Lucía glanced around. The crooked walls, the new lights, the wonky tree, the dog lying paws up in a corner, the smell of sugar in the air. "No," she said. "I'm tired, in debt, and with a permanent emotional leak in the ceiling, but—" She smiled, really smiled. "Here nobody looks at my body like it's a miscalculation. They just ask if I've got more rolls." "You're wrong," Elliot said slowly. She raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me. There is someone here who looks at your body," he corrected. "Just not because it's a mistake." Lucia's mind went blank for a second. On Elliot's face there was no mockery, no cheap leer. Just honesty with a hint of nerves. "Okay, right. We've officially left the neutral zone. This is emotionally slippery snow territory." She cleared her throat. "You do realize you're walking through a minefield, right?" she asked. "I do," he said. "And I also know you've spent a long time hearing awful things about yourself from someone who was supposed to love you. I just wanted to say that. From where I'm sitting, your curves are not a problem. They're a part of you. And I like the whole package." Churro chose that moment to let out a spectacular snore. Lucía burst into a nervous laugh. "Thanks for the technical input," she said. "I'll add it to the audit, but inside something had loosened, just a little. Keep it, just in case. Don't believe it all the way yet, but keep it." "And you?" she asked then, turning the spotlight around. Apart from being the guy with the plans and the lights, what ghosts are chasing you? Elliot leaned back in his chair, staring at an undefined spot on the ceiling. I had a project in the city, he began. Big one. The kind that ends up in magazines. An integral urban regeneration plan. It sounded idealistic, artsy, all very beautiful. I was the first one to get excited. He rubbed his hands as if there were still dust from that site on them. At first I didn't see the trap, he went on. I made layouts, renders, models. Talked about open plazas, green spaces, renewed local businesses. Until I started noticing that, in meetings, the only word that really mattered was profitability. Lucía watched him closely, chin resting in her hand. One day, he said, I went back to the neighborhood we were revitalizing. And the corner cafe that had been there 20 years was gone. In its place there was, a big chain. With a perfect display case. Let me guess, she murmured. Specialty coffee, identical cookies, background music that sounds the same everywhere. Exactly, he nodded. And the owner of the old cafe, a woman like you, about your age, was outside looking in through the new window like she'd just lost her home. The word floated between them again. That day, Elliot said, I looked in the mirror and didn't like what I saw. Not just as a professional, but as a person. I realized my work wasn't neutral. What I drew on paper became other people's reality. And that even if I wasn't the boss, I was still part of that machine. Silence, just the hum of the fridge at the back and the tick-tock of the clock. So I left, he finished. Walked away from a very good salary, the easy path, a big ego boost, and moved to a town where the biggest yearly crisis is whether the Christmas tree is going to survive all the lights. Lucía smiled with a new layer of respect. You're definitely not the typical corporate envoy, she admitted. Churro got up, stretched with a crackle of bones, and went to rest his snout on Elliot's knee, as if officially signing off on the confession. Elliot scratched behind his ear gratefully. And you, Lucía added lighter now, if you ever need someone to remind you you're better than your bosses, you come here. I'll treat you to a roll, just one though. We're not going to overdose on sugary emotional support. I accept the terms, he smiled. Once a month minimum. For a moment, the bakery felt smaller and fuller at the same time. As if the air had a different weight now, a kinder one. Lucía stood up. Come on, she said. Before we get even more intense and you end up crying into the dough. We've got stars to hang or Martha will say tomorrow that the magic never happened. Elliot stood as well. As he passed by her, their arms brushed. Light contact, but enough for a current to run under her skin. They positioned themselves under the central beam. She held the box of stars. He went back up the ladder. Lucía raised her hands to pass the decorations one by one, and every time their fingers touched. You know what the worst part of all this is? She said, trying to distract herself from the temperature her face was reaching. That tomorrow you'll remember you have to bake double? He guessed. That I'm starting to get my hopes up, she admitted, almost without meaning to. And that scares me a little. Elliot froze halfway through hanging a star. About the tour?
He asked slowly. About the bakery? She looked up at him.
The garland lights framed her face, making her look even softer. About everything, she said. About the tour, the bakery, and about the guy who climbs my ladder to fix leaks without asking for anything in return. He held her gaze for a few seconds. Then he climbed down the last rung until he was standing right in front of her. I am going to ask for something in return, he said very quietly. Lucía's heart jumped so hard it almost threw her off balance.
Here we go, weird request. A kiss. Marriage proposal.
Who knows? I want you to tell me if at any point this, he gestured to the space between them, becomes too much or not enough. I don't want you bottling it up because you're afraid of being dramatic or too demanding. Promise me? Lucía hadn't expected that kind of request. She felt the air rearrange itself inside her chest. I promise, she said. They stayed there, just a few centimeters apart, breathing the same air, the lights reflected in their eyes. The moment had first kiss written all over it. The oven chose that exact second to screech. Lucía jumped. My braids, she yelped. I forgot about the test batch. She ran for the kitchen, muttering curses under her breath, Elliot stayed where he was, smiling at the empty space. Relax, Blake. This clearly isn't being written by Hollywood. Here, the oven calls the shots. From the kitchen, she shouted, "They survived. More or less. We don't have to cry over the dough." "Then it is officially a good afternoon," he called back. As Lucía pulled the tray out, cheeks slightly flushed, she thought, "Okay, fine. Maybe we are a little bit in a rom-com. But at least here the drama smells like cinnamon." And so, with stars dangling, lights glowing, and an almost kiss interrupted by test braids, the night went on. The sugared star was ready for the tour. Its owner was starting to be ready for something else too. It was the day before the tour dawned dark and white at the same time. A heavy sky and snowy streets. The kind of day when the whole town hides behind windows, drinking hot things. In La Estrella Azucarada, though, there was no silence. There was organized noise. And flour. A lot of flour. "If this doesn't work, I'm changing my name and going off to raise goats," muttered Lucía, planted in front of the central table. On it she had 3 trays with 3 different versions of her newest creation. The snow braid, the special gamble for the tour. Version 1, filled with chocolate and orange. Version 2, filled with cinnamon, cardamom, and a touch of almond. Version 3, filled with a soft vanilla and lemon cream. Churro had already tried to steal from the edge of the table twice and had been banished to a full meter away. In his bed, watching her with martyr eyes. "I'd like to remind you you are not alone in this tour thing," said a voice behind her. Elliot came in from the front room, closing the door with his foot. He had flour on his cheek, his shirt sleeves rolled up to his forearms, and the bakery apron on over everything. Now that's a Christmas fantasy. An architect in an apron. Who needs reindeer? "I brought reinforcements," he added, lifting a paper bag. "Coffee from the square stall and hot chocolate for emotional bribery." "I accept the bribe," said Lucía. "The coffee too." Martha, who was sitting at her usual table with a blanket over her knees, watched them with delight. "I just hope that, by the end of the night, the braid isn't the only thing that rises," she commented, far too loudly. "Martha," warned Lucía, with half a smile. "What? I'm talking about the dough," she replied, innocent as a liar. Elliot coughed to swallow his laugh. "We should set some priorities," he said, looking at the trays. "Who's on the tasting panel? Just us? Or do we let the Canine Committee in?" At the word jury, Churro wagged his butt. "The Canine Committee has no emotional control," Lucía replied. "Everything that smells like butter seems excellent to him." "He's not objective," Churro sighed dramatically. Life was hard. "Okay," she decided, rubbing her hands together. "We've got 3 versions and 1 shot. The snow braid has to be special enough to justify me waking up at 4 in the morning all December." "Didn't you already do that?" Elliot asked. "Yes, but this time I'd like to do it with excitement instead of the existential dread of a Monday," she answered. They made coffee, poured chocolate, and set up a kind of improvised tasting panel at one of the high tables. Martha sat like the president of the jury. Churro stayed under the table, hoping for accidents. Lucía cut generous slices of each version and numbered them with little toothpicks and paper. "Okay," she said. "We taste, we think, we take notes." No political answers like, "They're all delicious." "This is science. Bread science," corrected Elliot. "My favorite branch." Version 1 went first. Martha took a bite, closed her eyes, and made a little noise only suitable for adults. "Chocolate and orange," she decreed. "If this had existed in my youth, half the breakups I've lived through would have hurt less. It's intense," Elliot nodded. "Very Christmas evening on the sofa with a blanket, and someone you trust enough to wear ugly. Pajamas in front of," Lucía wrote on her notepad. Version 1, blanket. "Emotional support, maybe too heavy for 8 in the morning." They moved on to version 2. The smell of cinnamon and cardamom filled the air. "This one smells like you," Elliot said without thinking. Lucía froze half a second with the piece halfway to her mouth.
"Excuse me? I mean," he hurried to explain.
Warm, spicy, but in a soft way. Familiar and surprising at the same time. Like walking into the bakery when it's still dark outside. Martha raised an eyebrow, entertained. "Oh, continue, young man," she encouraged. "This is getting good." Lucía bit into the braid to avoid saying anything stupid. The flavor exploded on her tongue. Cinnamon, sugar, almond, something slightly floral from the cardamom. This one is dangerous, she admitted with her mouth full. You can't take just one bite. It's like gossip. Or like a crush, added Martha. You tell yourself you're just going to look. And then suddenly it's 3 in the morning and you're stalking people on social media. Elliot laughed, wiping a crumb from the corner of his mouth with his thumb. Texturally, this one is perfect, he said, now in complete bread engineer mode. The filling doesn't run. It blends with the dough. It's juicy without being cloying, Lucía noted. Version 2? Smells like me? Addictive, texturally perfect. Version 3 was the softest. The vanilla and lemon cream was lighter. The braid almost melted on the tongue. This one tastes like Sunday morning, Martha decided. Calm, bright, like the kind of day when nobody bothers you. And like something that would get eaten very fast by kids, added Elliot. Maybe too fast. I'd worry about parents on the tour ending up with sugar-high children. Lucía tapped the pencil against her teeth. Conclusion? She asked. Version 1 is delicious, summarized Elliot. But a bit heavy for starting the tour. It's an afternoon braid. Version 3 is heavenly, said Martha. But you already have soft things. Muffins, cupcakes. If this is the star of the show, it needs more character. Lucía looked at version 2. The middle child, she murmured. Cardamom, cinnamon, almond. And it smells like me, apparently. Elliot held her gaze for a moment. Serious. It's the one that feels most like the bakery, he said. Like this place, like home. The word vibrated in the air. Lovely. Add the architect sees my bread as home to the list of phrases I never expected to hear in life. Martha hit the table lightly with the flat of her hand. Number 2, unanimous, she declared. Snow braid with cinnamon and cardamom. We've said it. Lucía circled the number on the notebook as if signing a pact. Fine, she agreed. But if this goes wrong, I'll put on the poster that it was your decision. Perfect, Martha replied. I'm old. What are they going to do to me? Take away my discount at the pharmacy? They laughed, and for a few minutes the tension loosened. After the tasting came the practical part. Test batches, baking times, checking how long the braid stayed perfect once out of the oven. The kind of detail work that looks boring from the outside, but for Lucía was almost a form of meditation. Elliot helped without getting in the way, taking notes when she asked, setting timers, moving trays with surprising coordination. At this point, I could pass as your apprentice, he said, pulling one tray out of the oven on her sign. At this point, you could demand a salary, she replied. But I'm warning you I pay in bread and life advice. I'll take it, he smiled. As night fell properly, the bakery looked like a snow globe, the inside warm and golden, the outside white and silent. The snow braid version 2, now crowned official, rested on the rack like a queen. I'm still afraid, Lucía admitted, leaning on the counter with her mug of chocolate between her hands. Of the braid? Elliot asked. Of everything, she stared at the kitchen. Of the tour, of not making it, of making it and not knowing what to do next. Of people coming in and seeing me. Of people not coming in. Elliot rested his elbows on the counter next to her. You know, fear and excitement are very similar, right?
He said softly. Same butterflies, same racing heart.
Sometimes the only difference is the story you tell yourself while it's happening. Lucía snorted a little laugh. Thank you, Dr. Feelings. You're welcome, Dr. Bread, he shot back. Martha pretended to look at her watch. Well, I'm going to head home, she announced, though she didn't move from her chair. My favorite telenovela is on. I don't want to miss the cliffhanger where they don't kiss again. You could stay and watch the live version. Elliot murmured under his breath. Lucía elbowed him lightly in the ribs. Martha stood up slowly, grabbed her coat and scarf, and shuffled towards the door. At the last moment she turned around. If you two are going to test more braids, don't forget the one with your tongues, she said cheerfully. Practice makes perfect. Martha, groaned Lucía. The old woman winked at her. Don't let fear eat more than the bread, she advised, and went out into the snow. Silence dropped behind her like a soft curtain. For a few seconds there were only the two of them, the hum of the fridge, and the smell of sugar and spices. Lucía stared at her mug. She's unbearable, she muttered. She's a genius, Elliot corrected. He moved around the counter and stood in front of her. Close, but not invading. Lucia, he said. She lifted her eyes. There it was again, that look that didn't strip her, didn't judge her, didn't measure her. That saw her. I know tomorrow is big, he went on. For the bakery, for the town, and for you, yes, she whispered. I also know you've held everything up alone for a long time, he continued. So your brain keeps whispering that if you let someone in, everything will collapse. She clenched her jaw. How annoying to be so right. I'm not here to knock anything down, he said. I'm here to add load-bearing beams. If at any point I become a weight instead of support, you tell me and I move. But let me be here, at least, Lucía swallowed. Her throat felt tight, like when you're about to cry and refuse to. Nobody ever asked like that before, she confessed. Then they were idiots, he replied, without drama. Churro, who had been dozing, got up and went to lie down right at their feet, as if drawing a little circle around them. Lucía breathed in slow. The cocoa, the cinnamon, the clean smell of Elliot's shirt. Okay, she said, almost in a murmur. Stay. The word left her lips before she could overthink it. Elliot didn't move fast. He waited. Can I kiss you? He asked. There it was. No stolen moment, no almost kiss cut short by an oven. A question clear and simple. Lucía felt the memory of all the times someone had kissed her without asking flicker through her head. The times she'd gone along out of inertia, out of custom, out of that, well, it's what's expected. This was different. This was hers. Yes, she answered. You can. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to change her mind. She didn't. The first contact was soft. A hello, not an invasion. Warm lips, the brief brush of his nose against hers, the world shrinking down to that small point where they met. Lucia's hand found its way to his chest. She could feel his heart under her palm, beating faster than before. Okay, good. It's not just mine that's doing the drum solo. The kiss deepened naturally. Like when you add a bit more sugar to a recipe that's already good but can take it. Still slow, still careful, but with a heat that didn't come from the oven. When they parted, they rested their foreheads together for a moment. Well, Elliot breathed. I'd say the test batch came out pretty well. Lucía laughed, a breathy, shaky laugh that loosened something in her ribs. If you use kitchen metaphors to talk about kisses, I'm charging you royalties, she warned. Fair, he conceded. You're the professional. They stayed close, the kind of closeness that didn't suffocate, only warmed. After a while, Lucía stepped back half a step. If I let you carry on, tomorrow I'm not going to be able to open my eyes at 4, she said. And that would be a disaster for the entire county, Elliot replied. We shouldn't risk it. He kissed her lightly once more, a short, grateful brush. Then he helped her tidy up what was strictly necessary to survive the next day. When they finally turned off the oven and cleaned just enough to avoid waking up to a war zone, Lucía walked Elliot to the door. The street was white and silent. The bakery lights, reflected on the snow, looked like a small lighthouse. Tomorrow's going to be a long day, he said. Get ready to see more people eating bread in one morning than in your entire life, she replied. As long as I see you smiling behind the counter, I think I'll survive, he added. He kissed her once more on the threshold, a softer kiss now, a promise. Then he went out into the snow, raised a hand in farewell, and disappeared among the flakes. Lucía closed the door, leaned her back against it for a second, and let her body relax. Okay, right, Christmas is coming in strong this year. Churro appeared, with a face that clearly said, And where are my braids? You and I are going to have to share the market boyfriend and the snow braid, you know? She told him, scratching his head. We can't have everything, the dog sighed, resigned. Lucía looked at the kitchen, at the doughs ready for the next day, at the braids resting on the counter, at the tour poster set up on the door. For the first time since she had opened the bakery, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a jump, scary, yes, but also exciting. And at the center of everything, among flour, cinnamon, and snow, something new was beginning to rise. A story that wasn't just about saving a bakery. It was about saving herself a little bit too. And about finally letting someone walk beside her on the way. The day of the County Christmas Bakery tour dawned offensively beautiful. Clear sky, shy sun glinting off the snow. Chimneys smoking, church bells ringing at an hour when no decent human being should be awake. Lucía had been up since 4:30. By 7, La Estrella Azucarada already smelled of star bread, snow braid, cookies, and coffee. By 8, her hands were burning and her feet were protesting. By 9, she'd had so much coffee she suspected her blood was half caffeine, half icing. Churro, if I survive today, I'm getting it tattooed on my forehead, she muttered, setting another batch of braids on the counter. The dog was wearing his red bandana and the focused expression of a floor manager. The bakery was a perfect cozy picture, warm lights in the window, stars hanging from the ceiling, the reservation book full of names. The tour poster on the door with a proud little arrow pointing inside. Starting point. At 9:30. Elliot showed up with cold-tousled hair, a wool hat, a folder under his arm, and that smile that had already taken up residence in Lucia's chest without paying rent. "Morning, boss of the universe," he greeted, dropping a quick kiss on her cheek over the counter. "Morning, boy of controlled chaos," she replied, trying to make sure the blush wasn't too obvious. "Everything ready out there?" "More or less," he said. "The stalls are open. The sound guys have tested the speakers. The tree hasn't fallen over. Yet the mayor's nervous." "That's always a good sign." "And in here," she pointed at the trays, star bread, snow braid, cookies, coffee, and my will to live hanging by a thread. Elliot gave her a quick once-over that had nothing evaluative about it, and everything of, "I like you exactly like this. You look gorgeous," he blurted out, no anesthetic at all. "That red sweater with the green apron. It's like Christmas has become a person just to judge my carbohydrate choices." The official jury didn't take long. By 10, the bakery was full. Neighbors, tourists from nearby towns, couples, kids with scarves up to their ears. Elliot was going back and forth between the square and the shop, coordinating groups. Each route started the same way. The mayor said a few words at the door, pointed to Lucía as the heart of our tour. People clapped and came in to try the snow braid. Lucía smiled, cut portions, cracked jokes, answered questions, dodged compliments. How had I not heard this place existed? And juggled very hard not to start crying every time someone said, "We'll be back." Breathe. Don't cry on the dough. Drama goes in fiction, not in the bread. In one of the breaks, Elliot slipped behind the counter on the pretext of helping her restock. "This is a success," he said, that mix of exhaustion and euphoria in his eyes. "The mayor's happy, the hotels are happy. Radio reporters from the county have even come." "And you?" she asked, refilling a jug of coffee. "Are you happy?" He looked at her as if it were the easiest question of the day. "I am exactly where I want to be," he replied, without hesitation. Lucía felt that phrase stick inside her like sugar at the bottom of a mug. The morning went on, crazy and beautiful. There was a moment when the queue stretched out the door and disappeared down the street. Lucía worked on automatic, cut, serve, smile, thank, laugh, repeat. Elliot moved between tables, helping carry trays, cleaning, playing improvised PR, until the bell over the door rang and, for Lucía, time slowed down a little. The man who walked in wore an expensive dark coat, a perfectly arranged scarf, shoes that didn't know real snow, only the kind in covered car parks. His hair was starting to gray at the temples, but it was still well cut. The expression. That hadn't changed. A mix of superiority, fatigue, and condescension. Daniel, her ex-husband. By his side, a younger woman, stunning, thin, in a cream-colored coat, and the kind of boots you only buy if you have a joint account with someone like Daniel. Lucía felt a small punch to the stomach. Great, thanks, universe. Really. A surprise visit from the ghost of past decisions. Super festive. "Lucía," he greeted, as if they'd last seen each other the previous week. "I see all of this is lively." "Daniel," she replied, with a polite customer service smile. "Welcome to the chaos. What can I get you?" Inside, another voice spoke much more clearly. "I'll take a drink, if possible. And a blur filter so I don't have to see your face." The same old him looked around with a clinical air, freezing details. The decor, the bar, the uniform. "This is Clara," he said, indicating the woman.
My partner, not girlfriend, not wife.
Neutral word, washed, almost antiseptic. "Nice to meet you," said Clara, with a kind smile that didn't seem fake, which somehow made it worse. Lucía nodded. "Lucía, the annoying one responsible for all this," she said. "Fancy trying the snow braid?" It's the star of the day. Daniel looked at the tour poster, then at the packed shop. I've heard about the event, he commented. Pretty ambitious, considering you're competing with a chain. There it was. It hadn't taken him 2 minutes to bring it up. I'm not competing with anyone, said Lucía, calm. I make bread. People decide where they want to eat it. Elliot, who was serving at the back table, lifted his head at her tone. As soon as he saw Daniel, something in his posture changed. He stood straighter, more alert. Is that? He whispered to Martha. The X, she replied with dramatic relish. Brace yourself, kid. This looks promising. Daniel continued inspecting the bakery as if he were conducting an audit. I'm surprised to see you involved in something this big, he said. National, almost. The tour's county level, Daniel, not the UN, Lucía replied with an icy smile. And yes, I'm surprising. That's something I've been doing very well lately. He didn't even flinch. I'm just saying that with Frost and Bloom coming, he shrugged. Sooner or later things change. It's normal that the small ones can't keep up. Clara tried to step in. Honey. It's fine, Lucía cut in. I'm used to his economic opinions. They come as standard. She could feel the anger rising, but there was also a new kind of pride planted in the middle of her chest. Before, those comments would have drilled straight through her self-esteem. Now, they hurt, yes. But they no longer shattered anything fundamental. Elliot came up to the counter with an empty tray. Need any help over here? He asked, voice steady. Everything's under control, said Lucía. Daniel looked him up and down. You must be the architect, he said. The one drawing up the plans for the new town center project. The one who works with Frost and Bloom, right? Elliot clenched his jaw for a second. I'm Elliot, he answered. I work with the council. And I collaborate with them, yes. Daniel gave a sideways smile, smelling blood. Of course. And I suppose it has nothing to do with your tour starting here? He gestured at the bakery, and the fact that, coincidentally, the chain is negotiating to buy several buildings on this street. Lucía felt the world make an awkward little click. Negotiating what? She asked slowly. Elliot opened his mouth, but Daniel was quicker. Oh, he said, with fake surprise. He didn't tell you. I thought you'd at least be transparent with. He glanced at Lucía. Your baker girlfriend. The silence that fell was thick. The word girlfriend floated in the air like a balloon in the wrong place. Lucía didn't even have time to process it. What exactly are you talking about, Daniel? She asked, pinning him with her eyes. He took out his phone, swiped a few times, and showed her the screen. There was no need to read the whole email. The subject line was enough. Preliminary acquisition study. Maple Street. Priority, Central Bakery plus adjoining buildings. And right below, Elliot's name in the reply thread. Lucía felt the floor shift a centimeter under her feet. Not that. Please, not that. It's not what it looks like, Elliot began, bracing his hands on the counter. Lucía, since when? She asked without looking at him. He swallowed. They sent me those emails weeks ago, he admitted. They asked me for a general study of the street, not just your building. Nothing's been signed. What I suggested to them. I don't care what you suggested, she cut in, voice low, dangerous. I care that you kept it from me. Customers were watching. Martha was taut. Chero, who sensed bad vibes even if he didn't understand anything, took a couple of steps towards her. Daniel, satisfied, stepped back with a, I was just passing through air. I don't want to bother you any longer, he said. I just came to congratulate you on the initiative. His eyes swept the shop again. I really do hope it goes well for you. If not, you can always sell. At least you'll get something out of it. They turned to leave. Before crossing the threshold, Clara looked back at Lucía with a sort of silent apology in her eyes. Lucía didn't have the mental space to process that as well. When the door closed, the low murmur of the shop returned, discreet. Life went on. The line moved forward. The snow braid kept selling. But inside the protagonist, something was left hanging on a tightrope. Lucía, Elliot tried in a low voice. Let me explain, please. She squeezed the serving spoon so hard it almost dug into her palm. Right now I've got 20 people waiting for bread, she said, still not looking at him. I can't fall apart live. We'll talk when my shift is over. I didn't mean to hide it from you, he insisted. I was waiting until I had something solid to offer you. An alternative, brilliant. she cut him off. Another man making decisions about my life in silence because he knew what was best for me. Fantastic. What? A groundbreaking concept. Elliot was left speechless. He had arguments. He had nuance. But he also had eyes, and what he saw in Lucia's face wasn't just anger. It was fear. Old fear, the kind you don't win against with logic, because it comes from years of someone taking your voice and locking it in a drawer. "Do you want me to go?" he asked, swallowing his own pride. She hesitated for a second. She needed him. She needed his hands, his help, his organization, his calm. But she couldn't stand having him in front of her pretending they hadn't just seen that email. "Stay," she ordered at last. "Help with service. Do your job, and then—" "We'll see." The phrase "we'll see" tasted bitter, but it was all she had to keep from falling apart. He nodded, accepting the punishment without protest. The rest of the morning was a strange choreography. They worked together, but they no longer looked at each other the same way. Their hands avoided brushing. Smiles turned functional. Every time Elliot tried to come half a step closer, Lucia raised a wall with her eyes. "Focus, cut, serve, charge, thank." Your heart can collapse when you close the till. The tour ended after midday with applause, photos, speeches in the square. From the doorway, Lucia heard them announce that the snow braid was the flavor revelation of the year. People queued to take a piece home. The mayor hugged her, congratulated her, spoke to her about the future, workshops, projects. Lucia smiled, nodded, said yes. Inside, she was in another scene. When she finally closed the door and flipped the sign to closed, the silence hit like a wave. When she finally closed the door and flipped the sign to closed, the silence hit like a wave. Elliot was leaning against a table, the folder with the tour papers in hand, his hat tossed to one side, dark circles under his eyes. But the most striking thing wasn't his physical exhaustion. It was his expression. A mix of worry and something that looked like fear of losing something important. "It was a success," he said slowly. "Lucia, congratulations." "You were incredible." "We were," she corrected out of habit. However, the phrase fell without the warmth it usually carried. Chero, oblivious to human drama but sensitive to vibes, literally planted himself between them, like an emotional safety cushion. "Now," said Lucia, untying her apron with jerky movements. "You can explain everything." She leaned on the counter opposite him. Her body trembled a little, but her voice came out steady. "Since when did you know they were interested in buying my building, Elliot? Not the street in general." "My shop, my home." He held her gaze. He could have lied. He could have softened it. But they both knew that would only make things worse. "Since the beginning," he admitted. "Since the first email." But, she repeated. "There's always a but." "But I haven't stopped looking for a way for that not to mean you lose the bakery," he added. "The plans I've sent them make this place the core, not the sacrifice. I've proposed that they invest with you, not over you. That they support the workshop, that the hotel contract be yours." "And if they don't accept your proposal?" she cut in. "What happens if they decide they want the original version, the one in the email Daniel showed me? What happens if one day I get a letter from the landlord telling me I have to leave because there are better offers?" Elliot opened his mouth, closed it again, searched for words that didn't sound like enough. "Then I'll be with you," he said at last. "We'll fight it. We'll look for another solution." "I'm not going to leave you alone in. That's the point," she cut him off, raising her voice for the first time. "I don't need you to be with me once the problem is already here. I need you not to be part of the people creating it in the first place." The silence that followed was harsher than any shout. Lucia took a deep breath, trying to organize the storm inside. She lifted her eyes again. "So for now, I need you to separate your work from mine. Whatever happens with Frost and Bloom, you deal with the council, your uncle, whoever you have to. And when you have something solid, something that doesn't revolve around, don't worry. I'll protect you. Then you come and tell me. And we'll see if we can rebuild this." Chero rested his snout against Elliot's leg, as if trying to comfort them both at the same time. Elliot felt a sharp pain in his chest, but also a fierce admiration. The woman in front of him wasn't a scared victim. She was someone who'd learned to put herself first. And that was part of what he'd fallen in love with. "Okay," he said, voice a little rough. "I'll give you that space." And I'm going to fix what I can fix. Starting with telling my uncle that without your approval, there's no project I'm interested in. Lucía nodded, not yet able to thank him. For now, he added. Just tell me you haven't cancelled everything. That there's at least a tiny chance that if I do things right, you might be able to trust me again. She hesitated. She looked around the bakery, its lights, its braids, its dog. Thought about his kisses, his hands, his words from the night before. And about her own heart, which didn't want to shut itself down again. I haven't closed the door, she said. I've just left it on ajar with a latch. If you want to come in again, you'll have to knock louder. And better? Elliot nodded. Somehow, he knew it was the fairest deal he was going to get in his life. He put on his coat, picked up his hat, and stroked Churro's head. Thank you for letting me be here today, he said before leaving. And congratulations, Lucía. Really, what you've done with this place has nothing to do with Frost and Bloom. It's yours. And no one can take that away from you. She didn't answer, she just held his gaze for a second. When the door closed behind him, the bell sounded lonelier than ever. Lucía stayed in the middle of the room, surrounded by leftover pieces of snow braid, empty cups and compliments still floating in the air. She'd won the day. The tour had been a success. Her bakery was officially the sweetheart of the county. And yet, inside something was broken. Churro came over and rested his head on her foot. Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, she whispered to herself. Or well, yes, cry a bit. You've earned it. She dropped into a chair, took a deep breath, and, for the first time in a long while, allowed herself to cry out of anger, fear, exhaustion, and affection for herself, for having chosen not to betray herself again. Outside it started snowing again, slowly. The bakery still smelled like home. And somewhere in town, an architect with hands full of flour and mistakes was wondering how on earth you prove to a woman like Lucía that this time someone really is willing to change. The answer would come later, but the gesture, the big one, was still to come. 3 days after the tour, Snowberry Hollow had slowed down a little. The bakery hadn't. La Estrella Azucarada was more alive than ever. New customers. Phone calls asking about deliveries, messages on social media that Lucía answered as best she could between one batch and the next. On the outside, everything was success. On the inside, there was a hollow. Elliot hadn't set foot in the bakery since tour day. No messages, no calls. Except one, very short, the night before. Tomorrow there's an open meeting at the town hall about the Maple Street project. I'd like you to come. Not to decide for you, but to decide with me. Lucía had read the message 3 times, phone resting against the flour sack. Of course, a public meeting. Nothing puts more pressure on a woman with trauma than making decisions in front of an audience. But then she looked at herself in the bakery bathroom mirror. No apron, hair down, dark circles, curves and all. And she thought, you left an entire life behind so you wouldn't be a spectator anymore. You're not going back to the stands now. So that afternoon, despite the exhaustion and the fear, she closed early, left Churro in Martha's care. If anyone tries to rob the bakery, you bark at them until they regret it. Put on her coat and walked to the town hall. The assembly hall was fuller than usual. Neighbors, shop owners, the curious. There was a panel at the front that read Presentation of the Maple Street Revitalization Project. The word revitalization sent a shiver down her spine. She sat in one of the back rows, ready to watch from afar. She did not want to be the center of anything, not that day. Until she saw him. Elliot was standing next to the screen, with a thick folder and a projector ready. He wore a shirt, dark sweater and jeans. Not the glossy architect suit, but you could see the weight of the moment in the straight line of his back. The mayor spoke first, in her official event voice. Thank you for coming. As you know, Frost and Bloom has shown interest in investing in our Maple Street. We've asked our collaborating architect, Elliot Blake, to present a proposal. The idea is for this to be a transparent process. We want to hear from everyone. Lucía felt her shoulders tense. Transparent. Right. Finally, Elliot took the microphone. His eyes swept the room. And stopped on her for a second. He didn't smile. He just looked at her like you look at a fixed point in the middle of a storm. Then he began. Good afternoon. A few weeks ago, I was asked for a preliminary study of Maple Street. The initial brief was simple: maximize profit for the chain that wants to move in. What I'm bringing today is not that. The screen lit up. A map of the street appeared. Most of the buildings were still in place. No red crosses, no huge new box replacing everything. I've prepared 2 versions of the project, he explained. The first is what any franchise would want: buy buildings, homogeneous facades, concentrate activity in a single big venue. It's the quick, profitable, simple version. The one many investors love. He clicked to the next slide. A cold, perfect render appeared where La Estrella Azucarada was. Nothing, just another block. That version is here, he added. So you can see what I don't want to do. An uncomfortable murmur rippled through the room. Some shopkeepers shifted in their seats. The second version, he went on, is the one I'm defending. The image changed. Suddenly, Maple Street still looked like itself. Facades repaired, yes, but recognizable. On one side, the old empty building next to La Estrella Azucarada appeared restored, with an imaginary sign: Snowberry Hollow Community Bread and Crafts Workshop. Proposal B, Elliot said, is for Frost and Bloom to invest in repairing rundown buildings, not in buying and evicting the ones that already work. For them to sponsor a community bakery and craft workshop run by the council and, if she wants, he glanced at Lucía for a second without naming her, by the owner of La Estrella Azucarada. For the chain to use its name as a stamp of support, not as an omnipresent logo. There were a few approving sounds. The mayor frowned slightly, interested. That's on the design level, Elliot continued. On a personal level, he paused. I've decided to give up the percentage of profits they offered me in option A. I won't take commissions on any operation that kicks out local businesses. If Frost and Bloom wants this project, they'll have to accept it under those conditions. This time the murmur was clear surprise. Lucía felt a hard thud in her chest. Giving up money? On principle? And saying it out loud in front of his potential investor? Is this man okay in the head? And what's more, Elliot added, searching in his folder, I've brought a copy of the draft agreement they sent me, along with my written reply. I want it entered into the record and for anyone to be able to read it if they wish. He handed the papers to the town hall secretary, who looked at them as if he'd just been given a bomb.
In short, he finished, if this town accepts Proposal B,
I'll stay here, work with you, and fight to make sure Frost and Bloom adapts to Snowberry Hollow, not the other way around. If they don't accept it, I'm stepping off the project. I'm not going to be the architect who, again, signs the plans that turn homes into products. He finished. There was no applause right away. Just a thick silence, full of people digesting what they'd heard. The mayor was the first to react. Thank you, Elliot, she said. We'll open the floor. Hands started going up slowly. The butcher from the corner spoke. The lady from the yarn shop spoke. A young guy who'd opened a tattoo studio spoke. They all agreed on one thing. They preferred option B: less fast money, more roots. And what does Frost and Bloom say about this? Someone asked. As if summoned, a man in a flawless suit who had been standing off to the side until then stood up. Perfectly combed gray hair, tight jaw. Practiced smile. Richard Blake, Elliot's uncle, Frost and Bloom representative. Our company, he said in a smooth voice, values talents like my nephew very highly. We're a bit surprised by his vehemence. He smiled in a way that said, I'm not that delighted. We're willing to negotiate. But let's not forget we're talking about serious investment. We can't do charity. Lucía clenched her fists. Before she could overthink it, she found herself raising her hand. I'd like to speak as well, she said. The mayor nodded. Several heads turned. Elliot was looking at her, eyes wide. Lucía stood up slowly. She felt every gaze on her like spotlights. The old fear rose up her throat, but didn't choke her voice.
I'm Lucía, she introduced herself.
The owner of La Estrella Azucarada, that bakery. She pointed at a photo on the screen. My grandmother's bakery, the one that smells like cinnamon, the one that was on the radio yesterday because the snow braid has driven half the county mad. Soft laughter. That helped. I don't know anything about blueprints, she went on, or return on investment percentages. I know about getting up early, about needing, about customers, about bills. I know what it is to open the door every morning not knowing if you'll sell enough to pay the rent. And I know what it is to lose a home because someone in an office decided the project was worth more than your life inside it. Her eyes, without meaning to, met Richard's, then Elliot's. I don't want charity from Frost and Bloom, she said. I don't want anyone coming here to rescue me. I already rescued myself when I left a marriage I didn't fit in and built this bakery from scratch. What I want is that if a company comes to invest in this town, they understand this isn't a game board. It's our home, the word echoed. Home. Again. I like Elliot's proposal, she added. Not because it puts me at the center, but because it puts collaboration, not replacement, at the center. If Frost and Bloom wants to come in with that philosophy, welcome. If they want to come in and steamroll us and put us all into the same template of perfect display cases. She shrugged. Then they can do it somewhere else. Here. I'll keep baking bread even if I have to move to a smaller place, or share a space, or invent a portable oven. But I'm not going to applaud them wiping us out with a smile. She sat down. Her heart was pounding in her temples. Her hands were shaking a little. The silence lasted 1 second. And then the clapping started. First 1 person, then 2, then 10. In the end, the whole hall was applauding. Not the over-the-top movie kind, but something sincere, from a town that recognized itself in someone. Elliot was looking at her as if he were seeing her for the first time. Or as if, really, he were finally seeing clearly what he'd known from the start, how strong this woman was. Richard pressed his lips together, uncomfortable. I see there's a lot of feeling here, he said, diplomacy tight in his tone. Frost and Bloom will take note. We'll evaluate Proposal B carefully, he looked at Elliot. And we'll talk in private, nephew. No, Elliot replied, for the first time looking at him without hiding anything. We'll talk here. I don't want to negotiate behind closed doors over something that affects these people's lives. If the company accepts option B, great. If not, my involvement ends today. Another murmur. The mayor's eyes opened a little wider, but she didn't contradict him. Very well, Richard said at last, curt. We'll come back with an answer. The meeting broke up amidst comments, whispers, little groups forming and dissolving. The council promised to send a bulletin with the next steps. People began to file out, that mix of worry and hope hanging in the air. Lucía, still sitting, felt like 3 emotional trucks had driven over her. Martha came over and tapped her shoulder. You were brilliant, girl, she said, proud. If your grandmother could see this, she'd be sending bread down from heaven. Lucía laughed, her voice shaky. I almost keeled over up there, she admitted. My throat felt like when a breadcrumb gets stuck. You nailed it, Martha said. And now go talk to the architect. I'll take your dog to sniff the giant tree and criticize the lights. She winked and left, dragging along a very excited churro at the promise of outside. The hall emptied until it was almost bare. Just a couple of councilors murmuring, the mayor putting away papers and Elliot gathering his into a folder. Lucía walked over. Her footsteps sounded too loud on the floor. That, she said, stopping in front of him, was huge. Elliot looked up. His eyes were red. Whether from tiredness or from holding himself together, it was hard to tell. I suppose it's the bare minimum, he replied. After dragging you into this mess without meaning to. Don't play the martyr, she said, without harshness. You could have kept quiet, taken option A, pocketed your commission, bought yourself an expensive car, and no one here would even know your name. And yet, she looked at him with a mix of gratitude and caution. You renounced all that in front of your uncle, the investors, the town, she added. That's not small, he shrugged.
I had 2 options, he said.
Be the architect who signs yet another project that goes against what he believes. Or be the kind of man you could respect, even if you never want to kiss me again. The sentence hit her right, in the center of her chest. Elliot, I'm not trying to pressure you, he blurted. Really, what I did today isn't some trick to win points back. It's something I had to do anyway, with you or without you. The only thing is, he took a deep breath, it matters to me that you see it. Not because I owe you a pretty gesture, but because I owe you consistency. Lucía looked at him for a long time. This is new. A man who does something big and doesn't throw it in my face as an emotional invoice. Looks like I might have to update my entire internal operating system. I've seen it, she said at last. And I appreciate it. A lot. They stood in silence for a few seconds. The echo of the applause still seemed stuck to the walls. About us, she began. Elliot swallowed. I'll accept whatever you say, he told her. Even if it's a no the size of frost and bloom. Lucía let out a soft laugh. Elliot Blake, she said. I didn't cross half the hall to give you a dramatic no. Or a blind yes, either. I'm not that rom-com girl. She stepped a little closer. She caught the familiar smell. Street cold, coffee, a trace of wood and ink. What I do know is this, she went on. When you kept things from me, I felt small, pushed outside the conversation again. Today you put me back in the center. Not as a victim, but as an active part. He was listening as if every word were a brick in something important. So, she added, I don't want to close the door. I want to open it a bit wider, but this time we do it properly. No plans living inside your head that I don't get to see. No emails that affect me without you showing them to me. No more, I'm protecting you by hiding things. She pointed a finger at him, almost laughing. He raised his hands in surrender. Got it, he said. Radical transparency. If I ever act like an idiot again and hide information, you have official permission to throw a tray of hot snow braid at my head. That's too harsh a punishment for the braid, she replied. But I accept the deal. They looked at each other for a second in a silence that was less tense than before. Fuller. So, Elliot hesitated. Where does this leave us? You and me. Lucía took a breath. It leaves us here, she said. At a point where I'm not going to sacrifice what I've built for anyone, not even for you. I saved myself once. I'm not going to lose myself now just so someone else can be comfortable. The title of the scene seemed to whisper itself between the lines. But it also leaves us in a place where I can... She searched for the word. Choose you. If you choose me. Not as the brave town baker, but as the stubborn, sensitive, exhausted, excited, and sometimes unbearably honest person that I am. Elliot felt something settle inside him, like when a puzzle piece finally clicks into place. I choose you, he said, without hesitation. With bread, with traumas, with demanding dogs, and with town hall assemblies. And with your fear, too. Not as something to remove, but as something I walk alongside. Lucía blinked, swallowing down a thick wave of emotion. You've got a pretty way with words, Blake, she murmured. If you keep pulling speeches like that, I'm putting you to work writing personalized Christmas cards. As long as you feed me star bread while I write them, I'll sign anything, he smiled. For a moment, neither of them moved. Do you want to walk back together? He asked, finally. At least as far as the square. I promise not to turn it into an overly cheesy Christmas movie scene. Too much. She didn't answer with words, but she fell into step beside him when they left the hall. That was enough. For now, it was enough. Two silhouettes walking together under the snow, towards a lit-up bakery that was no longer just her refuge, but also part of a life she was choosing, in big, clear letters. The snow had been falling slowly for hours, as if someone had put the town into permanent cozy filter mode. From outside, the sugared star looked like a postcard, warm lights glowing, curtains half drawn, a little mist on the windows. The sign on the door said closed, but inside life went on. Lucía was barefoot in thick leggings and an oversized wine-colored jumper, curled up on the old sofa she'd dragged into the back room months earlier. The room that had once been just storage and was now the emotional survival zone. She had a mug of hot chocolate between her hands and a blanket over her legs. Next to her, sharing the blanket and most of the sofa, was Elliot with his hair still damp from the shower. Wearing a simple t-shirt and joggers that did dangerously flattering things to his shoulders, and his hands, if we're being honest. At their feet, right in the middle of the space, Churro was sleeping on his back, belly up, taking up more room than he was entitled to by contract. I have to admit something, said Elliot, breaking the silence like someone flicking a snowflake off their sleeve. I'm starting to suspect your sofa holds a personal grudge against my back. Lucía smiled, raising the mug to her lips. It's a combat sofa, she replied. I found it online, secondhand, from a house where at least 4 teenagers had already launched themselves onto it. You don't complain you've fallen asleep there twice already. I fell asleep because I was exhausted, he defended himself, emotionally. And because I was drugged with snow braid. That's one charge I have no intention of defending myself against, she laughed. On the low coffee table there was a plate with pieces of star bread that they'd been picking at without much order. The little lamps above the counter were on, and the rest was semi-darkness, warm and calm. "Do you believe it now?" Elliot asked then. "Believe what?" Lucía rested her head on the back of the sofa, turning towards him. "All of this." He made a broad gesture. "That your bakery's been on the radio, in the paper, on that blog the teenagers read. That the tour was a success. That we've had 3 days in a row with people saying things like, 'We've been looking for you for years,' or 'My grandma used to bake this bread,' or 'You saved my winter.'" Lucía huffed, half incredulous, half proud. "I'm still waiting for someone to jump out and shout, 'It was a hidden camera show,'" she admitted. "But," she looked around, "I'm starting to suspect it's real." A gentle silence settled. The kind of silence that doesn't ask to be filled, only shared. After the meeting at the town hall and that walk under the snow, they'd spent 2 days talking about the project, about the street, about their exes, about families, about totally mundane things. And not so mundane things. And between conversation and conversation, they'd been slotting together the pieces of a new us, more honest. Less perfect, more real. Elliot glanced towards the kitchen, visible from the small lounge. "I've been thinking about the workshop," he said. "Seriously. If the project goes ahead as we've suggested, that extra space, the sponsorship, everything. We could do bread classes, kids' afternoons, community baking days, even baking for anxious people sessions." He looked at her. "All under your name," he added. "Your brand, your style. I help with the space, the plans, the installations. At this point, I know every last brick of this building." Lucía hit her mug down on the table slowly. "You know what's weird?" she said. "That for the first time in a long time, when you say, 'we,' I don't hear, 'I'm going to take charge and you be grateful.' It sounds..." She searched for the word. "Like adding up?" He looked at her with almost tangible tenderness. "Because I don't want to take anything away from you," he said. "I want you to have more. More stability, more time, more breathing room. If you want a workshop, we'll get you one. If you want to stay like this and just have them sponsor the snow braid, that's fine too. If one day you decide you've had enough and want to write a recipe book instead, or an online course, I don't know. But I want you to choose." Lucía felt her chest literally fill with new air. "Do you realize how high you're setting the bar for future candidates, if this goes wrong?" she asked, half joking. "Imagine going back to the market and having to ask, 'So, how are you at negotiating with chains and other people's trauma, darling?'" Elliot burst out laughing. "For my part, I sincerely hope you never have to go back to the market," he said. "The market's got enough work on its hands with your braids." He turned a little more towards her, resting his arm along the back of the sofa, closing the distance. "Can I ask you something?" he added. Lucía nodded. "What was the exact moment when you stopped thinking of me as the handsome guy from the chain and started seeing me as something else?" She thought about it for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling as if she were searching for the answer written in the shadows. "I never stopped thinking you were handsome," she clarified. "That bit you've had going for you from day one. But I think the shift was when I saw you holding the ladder." "Seriously?" He was surprised. "Yes," she nodded. "There was something ridiculously sexy about seeing you there, anchored, solid, making sure I didn't fall. It wasn't just about the ladder. It was the feeling that you were there so I could do what I needed to do without taking over, like I mattered, that wasn't free," she shrugged. "And then," she admitted, "then came your hands in the dough, your speeches about not wanting to repeat old patterns, your tell me if this is too much, and well, here we are." Elliot looked at her with a mixture of emotion and humor. "Your turn," she said then, with a half smile. "When did I stop being the practical baker and become whatever it is I am in your head now?" "First of all, you've never been practical in the boring sense," he said. "But if I had to pick a moment, I think it was the first time I saw you laugh at yourself without hurting yourself." He looked straight at her. "When you said that if I fell off the ladder at least I'd land on something soft, and then immediately made it into a joke without tearing yourself down," he went on. "I saw you defending yourself and, at the same time, defending yourself from yourself in a really brave way." Lucia blinked a couple of times, swallowing the emotion. That's very specific, she said.
I watch you, he admitted quietly.
A lot. Atmosphere thickened a little. Not uncomfortable, more like charged with possibilities. Churro, maybe sensing the rising emotional temperature, rolled over with a dramatic sigh and got up, trotting over to his bed in the corner, as if to say, if you're going to get all mushy, do it without witnesses. You're so dramatic, dog, murmured Lucia. Elliot put his mug down on the table and moved a bit closer. Their knees were almost touching under the blanket. Speaking of watching, he said, voice low. I've been looking at you all evening. With that jumper, that blanket, your hair all messy, your no makeup face, and that look of, I've survived too much, and I'm still here. Lucia let out a soft laugh. My Christmas marketing is working, I see, she joked. It's working so well we should put a warning on the door, he replied. Beware, very good bread inside and an extremely attractive owner enter at your own risk. She shook her head, but the smile wouldn't fit on her face. Come here, she whispered, tugging gently on his shirt. The kiss came without hurry. They didn't have to prove anything to each other, just confirm what was already there. The blanket slipped a little, bearing the curve of her hip. His hand settled there with a naturalness that made her skin shiver. There was no hesitation, no, I'll hold you a bit, but not too much, just in case. There was affirmation, recognition. Lucia shifted onto him, turning sideways, bringing one leg up onto the sofa, her weight half resting on his chest. Elliot's hands slid up, anchoring her lightly at the waist, not to make it smaller, but to draw it closer. Their breathing mingled, warm, quicker each time. Her fingers found their way under the hem of his t-shirt, exploring the warmth of his chest, his throat, the angle of his jaw. Oh, hello, Desire. I thought you'd retired. Lovely to see you active again and with good taste. When things started to heat up, a longer sigh, a gasp, a hand tugging a fraction more at fabric, Lucia pulled back a few centimeters, resting her forehead against his, breathing hard. Elliot, she whispered. If we keep going, we're not stopping at the sofa and soft kisses. He closed his eyes for a second, as if he needed all his resources not to fling himself at her like a man madly in love. I know, he said, voice rough. And believe me, my body is currently giving a slideshow presentation in favor of continuing. She gave a short laugh, still with her pulse racing. I need to ask you something, she added. Ask me whatever you want, he replied without hesitation. Can you tell me again that if at any moment I want to stop, we stop? She asked, the words tumbling out. I know there's consent, I know I want this, but I need to hear it again so my head can fully believe it's safe. Elliot raised a hand and stroked her cheek, her hair sliding down her neck to her shoulder and along her arm to her wrist before interlacing his fingers with hers. If at any moment you want to stop, we stop, he said slowly, clearly. I don't care if we're halfway through, if I'm seeing stars, if I'm dying to carry on. Your no or not now will always weigh more than my desire. Always. I'm not with you because of physical intimacy. Or because of your kisses? Or your story? Or your bread? Or anything else? Okay? Lucia felt a wave of relief mixed with desire, a strange, new thing, but deeply pleasant. Okay, she whispered. She kissed him again, more sure now, letting hands wander more freely this time. Hands that slipped under fabric, skin pebbling at the contact, breaths catching halfway. The scene didn't need details to be intense. It was enough to know that, somewhere between the sofa and the faint light from the kitchen, a woman who had spent years shrinking herself found herself taking up all the space she needed on top of an architect who admired that space like it was a masterpiece. The next steps, the t-shirts lost along the way, a belt unfastened, whispered words in the dark stayed between them and the walls of the bakery. What mattered, what really mattered, was something else, that everything happened at her rhythm, with her yeses, with her pauses, with her laughter without guilt, without that sense of, I'm taking up too much space. For the first time in a long time, it was an I'm here whole and this is mine too. The next morning, the gray winter light slipped through the tiny window in the back room. Churro was snoring in his bed, legs twitching mid-dream, clearly exhausted from the intense labor of ignoring his humans the night before. Lucia woke with her face resting on Elliot's chest, a leg tangled with his, a hand caught halfway up. It took her a few seconds to remember where she was. Then she remembered everything. Oh, well, hello, new stage. Elliot was sleeping on his back, an arm around her, his mouth slightly open, hair in chaos and the faintest mark of one of her bites on his shoulder. "You're dangerous," she whispered, tracing an imaginary line along his collarbone with her finger. He opened one eye. "Do I talk in my sleep?" he asked, voice deep with sleep. "No," she said, "but you snore a little. Like a cuddly bear." "Great," he grumbled. Exactly the image I was going for. They stayed a few seconds in that bubble of bed, skin, and warmth. Then Lucia's internal clock sounded an alarm. "I have to get up," she murmured. "If not, the whole town's going to think I died under an avalanche of sugar." Elliot held her a little tighter. 5 more minutes, he pleaded. "If I'm not an architect, you're not a baker, we're just 2 people who don't have to fix yet." She sighed, defeated. 5 minutes, she agreed. "Then I really am getting up. And you're helping me with the oven, by the way." "Deal," he smiled. I can be the official assistant to a baker with a happiness hangover. After a while, inevitably, they got up. Lucia threw on the nearest jumper and leggings she could find, which took a while because they'd ended up tossed who knows where. They opened the door that led to the bakery area. The smell of flour, coffee, and something indefinably like home greeted them like an old friend. Lucia paused for a second, barefoot on the cold floor, and looked around. The counter, the ovens, the chairs in their places, the decorations from the tour still hanging, the little lights, the poster on the door, the plate with crumbs from the night before, the blanket thrown over the sofa. And beside all that, Elliot, tousled, half-dressed, hands shoved into the pockets of his joggers, looking at the bakery like it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen at 8 in the morning. "What are you thinking?" he asked. Lucia took a deep breath. "That, for the first time since I opened this place, I don't feel like this bakery is my bunker," she said. "It doesn't seem like the trench where I hide from the world. It feels like our base of operations." For everything outside, he came closer and kissed her lightly on the temple. "Well, from our base of operations," he said, "I propose the following strategic plan. You bake the star bread. I make sure no council plugs blow up, and together we convince the universe that the bread's good, but the owner's even better." Lucia rolled her eyes, but her heart did a somersault. "If you say that to customers, I'll give you a raise on your imaginary salary," she threatened. "I'll accept payment in braids," he replied. Churro, who had just trotted into the room, shook himself all over, then plopped down right between the two of them, with the face of someone saying, "Okay, it looks like this human is no longer a guest. He's a resident. I think the Canine Committee has officially accepted you," said Lucia. "It's the only committee I really cared about," he smiled. Lucia went over to the oven, turned the knobs, listened to the familiar click of the burners lighting. Heat began to fill the kitchen little by little. She turned to Elliot. "Merry early Christmas, I guess," she said. "Even if there are still a few days to go." He leaned on the doorframe, taking in the scene. Her, the oven, the light, the dog, the stars, life.
Happy whatever with you, he replied. Christmas, January, a random Tuesday.
"I'll take it all." She smiled, feeling that phrase lodge itself somewhere soft inside her. Mental note to the Lucia from 3 years ago. Yes, you got out of that. Of the marriage, of the fear, of the nights of counting coins. And you ended up here. With a partially domesticated architect. You did well. As she prepared the first batch of star bread for the day, she thought that maybe, just maybe, love could arrive at a small, quaint bakery. Not as a miracle that fell from the sky, but as something needed slowly, with patient hands, with conscious choices, with the stubbornness of continuing to believe that a good life is possible. Outside, Snowberry Hollow was starting to wake up. Inside, the bakery smelled like home. And Lucia's heart, for the first time in many winters, did too. If you've made it this far, you're officially my kind of person. Lover of bakeries, holiday romances, and curvy heroines with full lives. If you still haven't subscribed, this is the perfect moment to do it. That way you won't miss the next stories and you'll really help this channel grow. Hit subscribe, turn on the little bell, and if you feel like it, tell me in the comments if you want more stories set in bakeries, snowy small towns. Or with guys like Elliot.